Why do some people live so long that their final years stretch out like an endless corridor? Not full of vibrant experiences, but of quiet aches, lonely rooms, and the slow erosion of physical strength. Is this nature's design, or is something deeper at work? It's a haunting paradox. Modern medicine celebrates every year we add to human life expectancy, but what if those extra years aren't always a gift? For many seniors, extended life becomes a waiting room filled with pain and silence. Yet behind that pain, could there be a hidden purpose? This question isn't just philosophical, it touches something primal. We all hope that life has meaning, that suffering isn't random. Especially when we see elders who've already endured so much continue to carry their burdens into their 80s, 90s, and even beyond 100. Why do some suffer more the longer they live? Science may point to biological deterioration or the side effects of longevity, but spiritually inclined thinkers offer a more provocative idea. They argue that these extended lives might serve a purpose unseen by the eyes, but deeply felt by the soul. Among those voices was Edgar Cayce, a mystic who offered detailed insights into reincarnation, karma, and the soul's journey through physical life. Rather than view old age purely as decline, Cayce suggested it may be the soul's final opportunity to complete unfinished tasks, emotional, spiritual, and interpersonal. This view doesn't erase the hardships of aging, but it transforms their meaning. What if pain isn't punishment, but preparation? What if waiting isn't stagnation, but a pause for inner alignment? In a society obsessed with youth, we've forgotten to ask why time sometimes stretches for those who feel they've already done their part. Maybe, just maybe, time itself becomes the teacher in the last chapters of life. Let's explore a different idea of aging, not as a winding down, but as a stage of refinement. Think of it as a classroom where the lessons are quieter but far more profound. Elders often carry the weight of time not just in their bodies, but in their emotions. They've witnessed loss, buried friends, outlived spouses, and sometimes watched their own children grow distant. These experiences are not just sad, they're sacred. In fact, they might be essential to the soul's evolution. Edgar Cayce taught that each soul enters life with a unique mission. While youth and adulthood are about external pursuits, careers, relationships, achievements, old age brings us inward. It strips away the distractions so the soul can confront what truly matters: forgiveness, acceptance, peace. In Cayce's vision, if the soul has unfinished business, an unresolved conflict, a withheld apology, a lesson in patience or compassion, it may extend its time in the physical body. That extension isn't accidental. It's intentional, even merciful. The body weakens, but the soul gets another chance. This doesn't mean that every elder who lives a long, difficult life has failed spiritually. Quite the opposite. Longevity can be the universe's final classroom, one where time becomes the chalkboard, and each ache or sigh a whisper from the soul, asking, what else can I let go of? What am I still clinging to? Pain, in this context, isn't just something to endure, it's a catalyst for inner transformation. Those final years, though quiet, may hold the most spiritually intense moments of a person's entire life. Modern medicine can prolong life, but it cannot guarantee quality of life. Advanced medical devices, drugs, and treatments can keep the heart beating, but they cannot heal the soul. What happens when an elderly person continues to live in a weakened body, unable to work, play, or even communicate normally? Science calls this natural aging, but a spiritual perspective sees it as a sign of karma being resolved. Edgar Cayce believed that many of the illnesses and challenges of old age are the result of unreleased energies from the past, both in this life and in previous lives. It may be unresolved resentments, unforgiven mistakes, or unfinished soul lessons. And as a final test before graduation, the soul must face all that has not been completed. If we look at old age through this lens, the final years of life are no longer a series of meaningless, painful days. They are an inner journey, an opportunity to release karma, to forgive, to shake off the last ties before the soul continues its journey. In Edgar Cayce's philosophy, karma is not a punishment, but a principle of balance. Every action, word, or thought leaves an energetic imprint, and those imprints come back to us so that we can learn the necessary lesson. In old age, many people begin to experience the consequences of the karma that has accumulated over a lifetime, and sometimes, multiple lifetimes. It may be loneliness reflecting neglected relationships. It may be illness reflecting past carelessness with the body or lack of compassion for others. What is unique is that Cayce believed that these experiences are not meant to be a punishment, but rather for the soul to resolve and grow. Every difficult moment carries with it an opportunity for transformation. Instead of asking, "Why am I enduring this?" older people can ask, "What can I learn from this situation?" When the question changes, the energy changes. The elderly are no longer victims of fate, but become the last students of the school of life, where the last lesson is sometimes the most important. We often see the elderly as frail and needy. But if we look at them as spiritual role models, we see something deeper. Perhaps their suffering is teaching the younger generation lessons about resilience, compassion, and letting go. An old man lying quietly in a hospital bed, unable to speak much, but his eyes still filled with love, that can be a more vivid lesson than any lecture. An elderly person choosing to forgive a loved one who has hurt them before they die, that is a deeply moving act of forgiveness. In Cayce's vision, the soul does not live for itself. Every action, every choice has an impact on others. A person lives long not only to learn lessons for themselves, but also to serve as a silent teacher for those who are watching. We can never know the true strength of an old person just by looking at their body. Because the soul may be completing a great journey, and it is their final presence in this life that is the most beautiful part. Many older people experience a lingering sense of weakness as if they are stuck between two worlds, no longer fully alive, but not yet able to leave this world. This can be interpreted as a transitional period, where the soul is cleaning up, untying its last ties to the world. According to Edgar Cayce, death is not the end, but only a change in state of consciousness. But to make the transition gently and peacefully, the soul needs to remove all the chains that have held it back, from resentment, regret, to fear of death or attachment to the body. That is why some people cannot go so quickly. Their souls still have work to do: forgive, accept, love, and sometimes teach their loved ones a final lesson. In some cases, the elderly live long so that those around them can learn to care, appreciate, and cherish the present moment. Their journey is not meaningless. It is a process of lightening the soul's energy, like a hot air balloon that needs to be sandbag-free to rise. No one wants pain, and no one wants their final years to be filled with misery. But from Cayce's perspective, pain is sometimes a gateway to the depths of the soul. Older people who experience loss, loneliness, and illness are not simply victims. They are facing the densest layers of karma, and each time they overcome a challenge, the soul moves closer to freedom. Just as diamonds can only be formed under great pressure, the soul can only shine when it is tempered by time and hardship. An interesting point Cayce emphasized is that if a person lives long and suffers a lot, it is not because they are punished by fate, but because they have the strength to endure and resolve it. Like an excellent student given the most difficult exam, the old person is undertaking the final stage of a spiritual training program. And if they pass, that soul will not need to return to earth again. There are people who, despite their advanced age and frailty, still maintain a clear mind, bright eyes, and a forgiving heart. They do not complain even when they are sick, do not resent being forgotten. They smile when they remember the past, accept the present, and are calm when they think about death. According to Cayce, this is an important sign: the soul is completing a cycle of reincarnation. Not everyone realizes this, because it is not ostentatious, not noisy. But if you pay attention, you will see that they radiate a special peace, a kind of magnetic field that makes others feel relieved when they are near them. That old person no longer fears anything, does not fight, does not compete. He simply exists as a living symbol of liberation. He has learned the final lesson, has loved enough, forgiven deeply enough, and is waiting for the time to leave the body like shedding an old shirt. In the light of that soul, we see a profound truth: living long is not as important as living meaningfully. And sometimes, suffering is the means to accomplish the greatest spiritual mission. One of the profound reasons why an old person lives long without being able to pass away is that their loved ones have not yet learned the necessary lessons. Edgar Cayce once said, "No one is born into your family by accident. The souls of parents, children, and grandparents all have a connection from before, sometimes as friends, teachers, or even debtors, in previous lives." When an old person is still alive, even if weak or sick, it may be because they are acting as a mirror for their loved ones. Maybe a child needs to learn to let go of control. A grandchild needs to learn patience, gratitude, or learn to love unconditionally. In this case, the old person is not only enduring for their own journey, but also for the journey of their entire family. They hold on to their last breath as a sacred patience, waiting for their loved ones to awaken. And when a loved one truly learns what needs to be learned, deeply and truly, the departure will come as gently as a bird flying to heaven. Some people live most of their lives in the mind and body, but experience a late awakening in their later years. This is not uncommon. In fact, the limitations of the body, isolation, and pain open doors to spirituality they never knew existed. Cayce described the soul in the final stages of life as recalling memories. Deep memories of the subconscious, past incarnations, old grudges, all may come flooding back in dreams or premonitions. Some older people even begin to say strange things, as if they were connecting with another dimension. From a modern perspective, this may be seen as paranoia or insanity. But in a spiritual light, it can be a profound shift, where they begin to recall their soul. It is also a rare opportunity for liberation. If that person can accept the truth, forgive the past, love the present, and open their heart to the divine, then even if it is late, their soul can still evolve and escape the cycle of reincarnation. One of the most frequently asked questions is, why would a soul choose to return to this life to suffer? Edgar Cayce answered clearly, because it was the soul's choice before reincarnation. Cayce described a state between lives, where the soul, together with its spiritual guides, considers the lessons to be learned, the karma to be resolved, and the relationships to be healed. In this state, the soul is not forced, but chooses the reincarnation conditions that are best suited to its evolutionary path. That is, if an elderly person is suffering, it is not a scourge from God or an injustice of fate. On the contrary, it is evidence that their soul is mature enough to take the hardest lessons. They have chosen this challenging path, not because they are weak, but because they are strong. Seen from this perspective, the suffering of the elderly becomes a noble sacrifice. No one sees the spiritual work they are doing, maybe even they themselves are not aware of it. But the soul knows. And the universe witnesses. There are souls who live long not only because of karma or personal lessons, but also because they are assigned a special role, to be the spiritual gatekeepers of their families or communities. Edgar Cayce once said that some great souls will choose to live long to maintain the axial energy for the entire family line. That is why, after an old person passes away, many relatives begin to experience great changes, upheavals, or a sense of disorientation. It is not because the passing is just an emotional loss, but because they have just lost an invisible pillar, a spiritual gatekeeper that no one knows about. Have you ever noticed that there are old people who talk very little, just sit quietly, but when they are alive, the house seems more peaceful? That is not a coincidence. They are gatekeepers between dimensions. And when they leave, that gate closes, to open a new phase for the entire family line. Many relatives fall into crisis when they see their parents and grandparents lying sick for years, motionless, no longer conscious, but still breathing with difficulty. In their hearts, the question resounds, why haven't you been liberated yet? Or even, why did God let them suffer like this? Cayce's answer is not to comfort, but to awaken, because they still have things to complete. So what can we, the witnesses, do? First, don't see them as burdens, because that creates negative waves that prolong the karmic cycle. Instead, send them gratitude, prayers, and forgiveness. Say the words they need to hear, even if they no longer respond. I forgive you, Dad, thank you, Grandma, for everything. If you feel tired, you can rest in peace. Their soul's here. And if that hits the nail on the head, they'll be able to breathe their last breath, as peaceful as a bird flying to the light. Death is not liberation if the soul is still entangled. This explains why some people die and still return to their dreams, haunt their loved ones, or cannot be liberated. True liberation only comes when the soul accepts its entire journey, learns what it needs to learn, and lets go of all attachments. For the elderly, if they can reach that state even on their deathbed, even if they cannot move or speak, it is a great victory for the soul. Edgar Cayce emphasized that, a soul that learns to let go in pain, never has to learn it again in the next life. That is the end of the cycle. We often think of those who live long as blessed, and those who suffer as punished. But Cayce turned that definition upside down. To live long in pain is not an injustice, but a spiritual privilege for souls who are strong enough to face their own darkness. It is an opportunity for deep repair, for love beyond conditions, for true liberation. And for those who care for loved ones, the presence of the elderly is not just a physical burden, but an invitation to enter into the depths of spirituality, where you, too, can heal your own karma. So instead of asking, when will they die, ask yourself, have I learned my lesson from them? Perhaps, a change on your part will be the key that opens the door for their souls to depart peacefully. If you find this video has touched a part of your soul, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts or experiences with your elderly loved ones. Each sharing is a particle of light that contributes to spreading a deep understanding of the soul journey. Pushpin, don't forget to like if you find the video valuable, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other profound spiritual and contemplative content. Outbox Tray, if you know someone who is caring for an elderly loved one or struggling to understand the meaning of extended life, please share this video with them.